The rain fell in thick sheets over downtown Austin, streaking the neon lights and turning the streets into rivers of reflection. Carla Monroe gripped her umbrella, cursing the weather under her breath as she walked home from her evening shift at the small downtown cafe. She had always hated the rain, but tonight, something in the air felt different, charged, electric, like the city itself was holding its breath. She was exhausted, craving a hot shower and a quiet night with nothing but a book and some leftover pasta, but fate had other plans. As she rounded the corner onto a less trafficked street, she noticed a figure slumped against the curb. At first, she thought it was just a homeless man passed out from alcohol or exhaustion. But as she drew closer, she noticed the uniform, dirt-streaked and torn, the boots scuffed, the hands trembling with a strange mixture of fatigue and fear. Blood had seeped through the fabric on his arm, dark and sticky against the gray camouflage. Carla's instincts kicked in. She didn't know him, she didn't even know his story, but she couldn't just walk past. She bent down, speaking softly despite the pounding of her heart. "Hey, are you okay? Can you stand?" The man stirred, groaning, his head lolling back. "Please help me," he whispered, voice hoarse and strained. Carla's eyes widened as she saw the insignia on his sleeve, Army Ranger. Her mind raced. Why would an active-duty ranger be lying bleeding on a city curb in the middle of a rainstorm? Without a second thought, she grabbed her phone and dialed 911, but he shook his head violently. "No, no cops. They'll kill me if they find me." Carla froze. Her pulse quickened, but she couldn't ignore the fear in his eyes. "Okay," she said softly. "Then we'll do this my way. Come on, we'll get you out of the rain." With effort, she helped him to her car, wrapping him in the oversized coat she always carried for emergencies. He shivered violently, and she could feel the tension radiating off him like heat from a fire. Every muscle in her body screamed at her to call someone, to get him proper help, but she held herself back. There was something in his gaze that told her he couldn't trust anyone else. As she drove, the rain pattering against the windshield, he remained silent at first, eyes fixed on the road ahead as if staring through her. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he said, "I'm an Army Ranger, but they're after me." Carla's stomach twisted. "Who's after you?" she asked cautiously, though a part of her already feared she didn't want to know the answer. He shook his head, pressing his hand against his wound. "Not safe, not safe. You have to keep me hidden." His teeth chattered as he spoke, but there was a steel behind his words, a discipline that betrayed the chaos around him. By the time she pulled up to the emergency room, her heart was pounding like a drum in her chest. She helped him inside, dodging the skeptical glances of the security guards and nurses. He needs help," she said, her voice steady but urgent. "No questions, just help him." One of the nurses frowned, about to protest, but then she caught the look in Carla's eyes, a combination of fear, determination, and something raw and unyielding. Reluctantly, they followed Carla to a treatment room. She laid him on the stretcher, careful not to touch his injury too roughly. "You'll be okay," she murmured, though even she wasn't sure she believed it. He exhaled shakily. "Thank you. I don't know what would have happened if you'd driven past." "You're welcome," Carla said softly. "But you have to tell me what's going on. If someone's after you, we need to know what we're dealing with." He shook his head again, grimacing. "Not safe, they'll come for you too. If anyone finds out you helped me, they'll kill you." Chills ran down Carla's spine. She wanted to ask questions, wanted to insist, but there was a steel edge to his warning that froze her words in her throat. She glanced at the clock, midnight. Outside, the rain hadn't let up, and suddenly the hospital felt too quiet, too exposed. As the nurses tended to him, Carla stepped back, heart still hammering. Her instincts screamed at her. Danger was closer than she realized. She stepped toward the window and saw a figure standing across the street, almost motionless, watching. A single umbrella shielded them from the rain, but the posture, the intent in the stance, it was deliberate, calculated, watching. Carla's breath caught. She hadn't even left the hospital room and already someone was tracking her. Panic threatened to rise, but she forced herself to stay calm. "Stay here," she whispered to the ranger. "I'll be right back." She stepped outside, rain soaking her through in seconds, and tried to approach the figure. But as she got closer, they melted into the shadows, disappearing before her eyes. Her heart raced, and a cold dread settled into her stomach. She knew that whoever was after him, whoever had been hunting him, had noticed her too. When she returned to the room, he was awake, eyes dark and wary. "They know you're here," he said quietly. "You've just signed your own death warrant." Carla swallowed hard, the weight of the situation pressing down on her chest. Fear and adrenaline mingled into a sharp, metallic taste in her mouth. She had helped him out of instinct, out of decency. But now that choice might cost her everything: her safety, her life, perhaps even her freedom. She sank into the chair next to the stretcher, gripping the ranger's hand briefly for reassurance. "Then we figure this out," she said. "Together." He gave her a faint, grim smile. "You're braver than most. Most people would have driven right past." The lights flickered overhead, and the sound of the rain outside seemed to grow louder, almost alive. Carla's phone buzzed violently in her pocket. She pulled it out, heart pounding, and froze. The caller ID read, "Unknown." Her thumb hovered over the answer button. Something inside her told her it was dangerous, but curiosity, and perhaps foolish courage, won. Before she could swipe to answer, a sharp knock rattled the door behind her. Hard, deliberate, insistent. Carla spun around, the blood draining from her face. Outside the door, footsteps shuffled. A shadow loomed through the frosted glass panel. The sound of someone breathing, heavy and controlled, reached her ears. She wasn't just helping a ranger anymore. She had stepped into a game far bigger than herself, one she didn't understand, with rules she hadn't been told, and enemies she couldn't yet see. And in that moment, Carla Monroe realized one terrifying truth: some acts of kindness come with consequences far greater than you could ever imagine. The next morning, Carla woke to the sound of her phone vibrating incessantly on the kitchen counter. Rain still streaked the windows, a dull gray light filling the apartment. Her body ached from the adrenaline of the previous night, but she didn't have time to rest. The ranger's warning echoed in her mind: "If anyone finds out you helped me, they'll kill you." Before she could even finish her coffee, her phone buzzed again. A text message from her boss flashed on the screen: "We need to see you immediately. Office. Now." A sinking feeling settled in Carla's stomach. She had been working at a mid-sized tech consulting firm for 4 years, always punctual, always reliable. She had prided herself on doing the right thing at work, in life, but she had never considered that doing the right thing for a stranger could jeopardize everything she had built. By the time she arrived at the office, her umbrella had been flung aside by gusts of wind. Her heels clicked on the marble floor of the lobby, a hollow echo that seemed to mock her anxiety. Her boss, a man usually measured and calm, now sat behind his desk with a hard, unreadable expression. "Carla, have a seat," he said, voice tight. She obeyed, her stomach twisting. "This is difficult," he began. "Your actions last night, helping someone off the street, refusing police assistance, and potentially putting sensitive information at risk. It's a violation of company policy." Carla blinked, struggling to process. "You're firing me because I helped someone who was injured." "Yes," he said flatly. "We cannot have employees who make unilateral decisions that could threaten operations or legal liability. Your employment is terminated, effective immediately." Her mind raced. Fired, just like that. The cafe, the late-night drives, the extra hours spent on projects, gone. Her livelihood stripped in one breathless moment. And worse, the ranger's warning felt like it had just become a prophecy. Carla left the office without another word, the letter of termination clutched in her hand like a small, sharp knife. Outside, the rain had intensified, slashing against her coat and hair, soaking her through. She felt numb, walking the streets aimlessly, the city blurring around her. Every passerby seemed like a shadow, every honking car a drumbeat of some unseen menace. She ducked into a small cafe for shelter, shaking, the paper trembling in her hands. The barista glanced at her nervously. "Rough morning." "You could say that," Carla muttered, barely tasting the coffee she ordered. Her mind was elsewhere, replaying every moment of the previous night. The ranger's haunted eyes, the blood, the whispered warnings, the shadow outside the hospital. Someone had been watching her then. And now she had no protection, no job, no routine, nothing to anchor her in normalcy. As she sipped her lukewarm coffee, a soft vibration alerted her phone. A text message appeared, unfamiliar number. "Stop helping him, or it will be the last choice you make." Her stomach plummeted. She recognized the handwriting of danger, direct, concise, chilling. This was no idle threat. Someone powerful knew what she had done. Someone was already in motion. Carla's mind whirled. Who could it be? Was it someone from the Ranger's past? Government agents? Or worse, mercenaries operating in the shadows of the city? The warning had a weight to it, a cold edge that pressed into her chest like an iron fist. She left the cafe quickly, her thoughts racing. Every alley, every doorway, every parked car became a potential threat. Her city had transformed overnight into a labyrinth of danger. Every shadow seemed alive, every reflection in the rain-streaked windows like eyes tracking her every movement. By late afternoon, she returned to her apartment, only to find the door slightly ajar. Heart hammering, she froze. Could it be that someone had followed her here? She gripped her keys like a weapon and pushed the door open slowly. Inside, nothing appeared disturbed, yet. No signs of forced entry, no footprints, nothing that screamed intruder. But Carla had learned enough in the last 24 hours to know appearances were deceiving. She felt the weight of eyes on her, as if the room itself was watching, waiting for her next move. Suddenly, her phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. "You have 48 hours to decide. After that, no one will save you." Carla sank onto her couch, her mind spinning. 48 hours. Who gave her 48 hours? And for what? She thought of the Ranger, the one person whose life she had intertwined with hers by a single act of compassion. He had warned her, but now the danger was personal. She could not run yet. She had no idea where to go, who to trust, or how far-reaching this threat might be. Her instincts screamed at her to leave the city, to vanish into anonymity. But another part of her, a stubborn part, refused to flee without knowing the truth. She had helped someone in need. She couldn't undo that. She couldn't abandon him, not when someone was literally hunting him and now hunting her. Hours passed. Carla paced the apartment, restless, unable to focus. She tried calling the Ranger, but he didn't pick up. Her mind jumped from one scenario to the next, imagining black SUVs tailing her, agents in the shadows, people watching her every move. Then, as night fell, there was a soft knock at the door. She froze, holding her breath. It was the same pattern from the hospital, calculated, deliberate. Someone was outside. Carla grabbed her backpack, slipping her laptop, phone, and a small pocket knife inside. Her pulse was deafening. She peeked through the peephole, nothing but shadows. Still, instinct told her not to open the door. Whoever it was, they were patient, waiting, observing. She backed away, realizing she could not stay. The city was no longer safe. Her job was gone, her apartment potentially compromised, and in 48 hours someone promised there would be no rescue. Carla sat on the edge of her bed, gripping the termination letter in one hand and her phone in the other. Tears threatened to spill, but she swallowed them down. Fear clawed at her chest, but beneath it, a flicker of resolve ignited. She had never considered herself a hero, never thought her choices could make a difference in a world full of indifference. But she had made a choice, and that choice had consequences. Real, dangerous consequences. She stared out the rain-streaked window, watching the city glow with lights blurred by the storm. Somewhere out there, people were moving in silence, calculating, plotting. And somewhere the Ranger, wounded, hunted, alone, was counting on her to survive the coming hours. Carla Monroe, fired, threatened, and terrified, realized something in that moment. She didn't have the luxury of hesitation anymore. The game had begun, and she was already a player. Cliffhanger, who was threatening her, and how much danger had she really put herself in by simply helping someone in need? In 48 hours, the answer would arrive. The rain had finally slowed to a drizzle by morning, but Carla Monroe's mind was stormier than ever. Her apartment, once a sanctuary of routine and quiet, now felt like a cage, the walls pressing in with every passing hour. She hadn't slept. Every noise outside her window made her heart skip a beat. Her phone remained dead silent, until an unfamiliar number flashed on the screen. Her hands shook as she answered, "Hello." A deep, rasping voice came through, low and urgent. "Carla, it's me, the ranger you helped last night." She swallowed hard. "You're alive, that's good." Her voice cracked slightly, betraying the exhaustion she had kept at bay. "I don't have long. Listen carefully," he said, his voice tense. "I was deployed in Afghanistan, part of a special operations mission, clean, precise, routine. That's how they wanted it to look. But I stumbled on something I wasn't supposed to see, something they don't want anyone to know about. They're not just after me, they're after anyone who helps me." Carla's mind spun. The military had secrets, yes, but what could be so dangerous that it would reach into the streets of Austin? What did you see?" she asked, almost afraid of the answer. There was a long pause, punctuated by shallow breathing. "A betrayal, a cover-up, high-ranking officers trafficking intel, operations off the books. I couldn't report it through channels. I tried. But they caught wind. They're cleaning up loose ends, and now you're tangled in this too." She gripped the edge of the table, the world narrowing to his words. It felt like the walls of her apartment were closing in. The ranger continued, voice dropping to a whisper. "You need to understand, Carla, if they find you, they won't ask questions. They won't care that you were innocent. You helped me, that's enough." A shiver ran down her spine. The thought of trained military or government agents hunting her, tracking her every move, was terrifying. Yet, alongside fear, a surge of determination rose. She couldn't abandon him, not after what she had done. Suddenly, the line went silent. Her phone buzzed again, another unknown number. A text appeared. "We see you. We're closer than you think." Carla's stomach dropped. The rain outside had stopped, but the storm inside her apartment had grown. She felt exposed, watched, and alone, but the ranger's words lingered like a lifeline. He was counting on her. By late morning, she had convinced herself she needed more information. She dialed his number again. This time, he answered immediately, though his voice was strained. "I'm at a safe location," he said quickly. "But it won't last long. They have eyes everywhere. Someone has to move you and me before it's too late." Carla ran her hands through her hair. "Safe location? Where?" "You'll have to trust me. Can you leave your apartment? Get somewhere else." "Alone?" she asked, panic rising. "Yes, they're watching. The less attention, the better." The words hit her like a cold slap. She realized then how precarious her situation was. Fired, threatened, hunted, alone in a city that suddenly felt like a trap. Her mind raced with possibilities. Every exit route she considered, taxi, bus, walking, seemed vulnerable. She gathered essentials quickly. Her phone, charger, wallet, some clothes, a pocket knife she had tucked away for emergencies. Her pulse pounded in her ears as she stuffed everything into her backpack. The thought of leaving her apartment, of stepping into the unknown, should have terrified her. But adrenaline sharpened her senses, focused her fear into a kind of clarity. Stepping outside, she felt the chill of the early morning air bite at her skin. The streets were quieter now, the storm having washed away most people, but Carla's eyes scanned every shadow, every doorway. Her imagination, always vivid, fueled the tension, painting ordinary objects as potential threats. A dumpster as a hiding place, a lamppost as a surveillance point, every parked car a hunter's perch. She ducked into an alley to avoid the main streets, heart hammering. Her phone buzzed again, a text from the ranger. "Go to the old warehouse district. Avoid main roads. Trust no one. Move fast. Carla's steps quickened. Every sound, the drip of water from broken gutters, the distant hum of traffic, the flutter of pigeons startled by her passage, felt magnified. She rounded a corner and nearly collided with a man in a dark hoodie, his face hidden beneath a shadow. He didn't acknowledge her, but his presence made her pulse spike. She kept moving, every instinct screaming that danger could be around any corner. Reaching the warehouse district, she noticed the buildings were mostly abandoned. Broken windows, rusted metal doors, graffiti marking walls like warnings. Her phone buzzed again, another text from the ranger. Go inside the third building on the left. Door is unlocked. Wait there. Don't make a sound. Carla approached cautiously. The door creaked as she pushed it open, revealing a dimly lit interior filled with crates and dust motes dancing in the weak morning light. She stepped inside, heart pounding, and immediately felt the difference. The air was heavier, quieter, like the world had pressed pause. A voice emerged from the shadows. Carla. The ranger stepped forward, bandaged arm held close, eyes scanning constantly. Relief and fear collided in her chest as she saw him, alive, breathing, shaken. You made it, he said, voice low, urgent. Good, but we don't have time to celebrate. They're looking for us already. Someone must have traced the hospital. Whoever is behind this, they move fast. Carla's hands trembled. Who is it? Who's after you? He shook his head. I can't say everything yet, only that it's not just local authorities, people in power, people who can make problems disappear permanently. That's why you need to stay low. That's why you need to listen to me. Every move counts. She nodded, trying to swallow the rising fear. Every fiber of her body was alert, every sense screaming at her to run, to hide, to fight, but she had no idea how. Hours passed in tense silence. The ranger finally began to share the details he could. Classified operations, evidence of corruption, betrayal from within his own unit, and the horrifying fact that civilians who interfered were often caught in the crossfire. Carla listened, taking in every word, heart racing as she realized the stakes. It wasn't just his life on the line, it was hers. At one point, a sudden noise outside the warehouse made them both freeze. Footsteps, soft but deliberate, echoed in the distance. Carla felt sweat prick her brow. They're here, she whispered. The ranger shook his head. Not yet, but soon. We need to move before anyone notices we're here. Carla felt the weight of the moment. Every instinct screamed for safety, yet the fear mingled with determination. She had helped him once, and now she had no choice but to see this through. The two of them gathered their few belongings and prepared to leave, knowing the city outside was no longer neutral ground. It was a hunting field. Before they stepped into the shadows beyond the warehouse, the ranger placed a hand on her shoulder. Carla, listen. Trust no one, not a word to anyone. One slip, one mistake, and it's over. Are you ready? She swallowed, nodding, her fear sharpening into resolve. I'm ready. And as they disappeared into the gray morning light, the city waiting silently around them, Carla realized just how deep the rabbit hole went, and that once you helped someone in danger, there was no turning back. Cliffhanger, were the enemies watching them already? And could Carla survive in a world where anyone, even the people meant to protect, might be against her? The city was waking slowly, its streets slick with the residue of rain. Carla and the ranger moved carefully, slipping between shadows and abandoned alleys, hearts pounding in sync with the distant hum of traffic. Every step felt precarious, every sound amplified, broken glass underfoot, the scuff of shoes on wet concrete, the low rumble of engines in the distance. Carla realized she hadn't felt fear like this in years. This was survival, pure and unfiltered, and it coursed through her veins like wildfire. The ranger led the way, his movements precise and calculated, every glance over his shoulder measured. Carla followed, backpack clutched tightly to her chest, adrenaline sharpening her senses to a razor's edge. Her mind raced with questions she dared not speak aloud. Who exactly was after him? How far-reaching was this danger, and how much had she exposed herself by helping him? They ducked into a narrow alleyway to avoid the main streets, only to find it blocked by a rusted dumpster. Carla's pulse spiked. "What now?" she whispered. The ranger peered around the corner, scanning for movement. "There's an escape route through the rooftops. Follow me." Carla swallowed hard. Heights had never been her comfort zone, but survival left no room for hesitation. One careful step at a time, they climbed onto a low wall, then leapt to a fire escape. The city below seemed distant now, irrelevant. As they moved from rooftop to rooftop, the damp metal slick beneath their boots. Below, she caught a glimpse of black SUVs moving slowly down the street. The vehicles were sleek, professional, and ominous, their tinted windows hiding occupants who were clearly watching, calculating. Carla's heart raced. These weren't ordinary pursuers. They were trained, methodical, lethal. They dropped into an abandoned warehouse, the scent of rust and decay filling Carla's nostrils. Crates stacked high created narrow corridors, providing cover, but also making her feel trapped, as if danger lurked around every corner. The ranger moved forward, leading her through a maze of corridors until they reached a small office at the back. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling silence. "We rest here for a few minutes," he whispered. "But not long. They'll trace patterns. If we stay too long, it becomes a trap." Carla sank onto a dusty chair, her legs trembling. Sweat and rain had soaked her through, her chest tight with exhaustion and fear. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why did it have to be someone like me who gets caught in this?" The ranger looked at her, his eyes intense, yet softened by a rare vulnerability. "Because you chose to do the right thing. Most people wouldn't have stopped. They would have driven past, pretended they didn't see me. You didn't, and now you're part of this, whether you want it or not." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She hadn't wanted this life, this danger, but she couldn't deny the strange sense of purpose it gave her. Fear mingled with a thrilling clarity. For the first time in years, every choice mattered. Every action had weight. A sudden noise from outside made them both freeze. Footsteps. Close. Calculated. Someone was moving through the warehouse with intent. Carla's breath caught in her throat. She could see the ranger's hand tighten on the handle of his small, concealed pistol. "They're close," he whispered. "We need to move." They slipped through a back door, emerging into a narrow alley behind the warehouse. Carla's stomach twisted as she noticed two men in tactical gear moving in formation down the street, guns holstered but ready. Their posture, their silence screamed discipline. This was no ordinary pursuit. This was professional, dangerous, and likely deadly. The ranger pulled her into a shadowed doorway. "We need to split up," he said, voice low but firm. "It will draw attention away from you. You'll take the route through the train yard. I'll handle them." Carla's eyes widened. "What? No, we stick together." He shook his head. "If we're caught together, it's over, trust me." Her heart pounded, but she knew he was right. Reluctantly, she nodded. "Go," she whispered. He gave her a fleeting, tense smile before disappearing into the shadows. Carla swallowed hard, heart hammering, and sprinted toward the train yard. Her legs burned with the effort, every step measured to avoid detection, every sound amplified in her ears. The yard was a labyrinth of tracks, rusted cars, and abandoned equipment, perfect for evading pursuers, but also perfect for a trap. Her phone buzzed, a message from the ranger. "Keep moving, don't stop, trust no one. 48 hours, it's on the clock." 48 hours. The same countdown from the unknown threat that had haunted her since the hospital. Carla's pulse quickened. She could feel danger closing in from all sides, an invisible pressure tightening around her chest. A sudden movement caught her eye, a shadow flitting between the freight cars. Carla froze, her pulse raced. Someone was there, watching, waiting. She held her breath, pressed herself against the side of a rail car, heart hammering. A voice whispered from the darkness, "Carla Monroe." She spun, but saw nothing. Her eyes darted across the yard, scanning for movement. The wind carried the faintest sound of tires on gravel, a low hum that suggested vehicles moving in formation nearby. She realized then that the danger wasn't just behind her, it was everywhere. The city, the rain-soaked streets, the empty alleyways, even the train yard itself, all of it had become a hunting ground. Every instinct screamed at her to keep moving, but the exhaustion gnawed at her, threatening to slow her down at the worst possible moment. Suddenly, a car engine roared from a nearby street, low and deliberate, breaking the tense silence. Black SUVs, sleek and intimidating, began to move, their tinted windows hiding the faces of the hunters within. Carla's heart leapt. They were closing in, faster than she had imagined. She sprinted toward a narrow gap between two freight cars, ducking low, careful not to make a sound. Her lungs burned, legs trembling with fatigue, but every fiber of her being screamed at her to keep going. She could hear footsteps behind her, taut, purposeful. The gap led to a service road that would give her temporary cover, but it was exposed, a risk she had to take. Carla leapt into the road, her backpack bouncing against her spine, and ran for all she was worth. The SUV slowed, black shapes appearing in the peripheral vision of her mind's eye, but she didn't look back. She couldn't. The ranger had trained her, in a sense, simply by giving her instructions, but her survival instincts had never been sharper. Finally, she reached the shadowed entrance of an abandoned subway tunnel. Darkness swallowed her almost entirely, and she slipped inside, heart hammering, knees trembling. The sound of her own breath filled the tunnel, amplified, echoing off the walls. Somewhere outside, the SUVs continued their methodical sweep, tires crunching gravel, lights slicing through the darkness like the eyes of predators. Carla pressed herself against the damp wall, sliding down to sit on the cold concrete. She could feel the adrenaline fatting, replaced by exhaustion and fear. Her hands shook as she fumbled for her phone, hopping for a message from the ranger. A single text blinked on the screen. "Good, you're safe for now. Keep moving. Trust no one." Safe for now. The words rang hollow. Carla knew it was only temporary. Every step, every breath, every second now mattered. She was no longer an ordinary woman. She was prey, and the hunters were professional, relentless, and closing in fast. Carla Monroe realized in that moment that her life had changed irreversibly. There would be no return to normalcy. The city she thought she knew had become a battlefield, every corner a potential death trap, every passerby a threat. And somewhere the ranger was out there, running, fighting, surviving just like her. And as she peered into the darkness of the subway tunnel, she understood the brutal truth. Running was no longer enough. She would have to fight, and she would have to do it soon. Carla Monroe pressed herself against the damp wall of the subway tunnel, her heart still hammering from the sprint through the train yard. Every echo of footsteps, every distant vehicle noise made her flinch. She knew the ranger had managed to draw their hunters away, but the weight of the past 48 hours pressed down on her like an iron fist. Fear had become a constant companion, but beneath it, a flicker of resolve ignited. She wasn't just running. She was surviving, and soon she would fight back. Her phone buzzed violently, jolting her out of her thoughts. The screen displayed an unfamiliar number. Her instincts screamed at her not to answer, but another part, one fed by desperation and the need for guidance, urged her to pick up. "Carla Monroe," a deep, commanding voice said. Yes, her voice was cautious, barely above a whisper. "We've been watching your situation. We know what you've done. You've helped an Army Ranger in mortal danger, and now you are in the crosshairs of individuals with capabilities far beyond your comprehension. Meet us at Pier 9 in 90 minutes. No one else must know." The line went dead. Carla's pulse raced. Navy? What were Navy officers doing contacting her, a civilian with no military training? Her mind reeled, but instinct told her this was her only option. The ranger couldn't do this alone, and she needed allies. She left the subway carefully, keeping to the shadows. The streets were quieter now, early evening settling over the city. The black SUVs hadn't appeared, but Carla knew that didn't mean the hunters were gone. Every instinct screamed that the moment she slowed down, they would be upon her. Navigating through side streets and alleyways, she approached the docks near Pier 9. The water glistened under the dim lights, reflecting cargo containers stacked like monoliths against the night sky. From the shadows, a small group of uniformed Navy personnel emerged, their movements precise, deliberate, professional. One officer, a tall woman with steel-gray eyes and a no-nonsense posture, stepped forward. "Carla Monroe?" she asked, voice firm but not unkind. "That's me," Carla replied cautiously. "I'm Commander Reynolds. You've helped someone important and now you're involved in something much larger than you realize. Follow us, quick and quiet." Carla's heart raced as they led her to a waiting van. Inside, the air smelled of leather and faint antiseptic. She was given a tablet, heavily secured, which displayed files, images, maps, and documents detailing the Rangers' mission, the corrupt intelligence officers involved, and evidence of illegal operations that had gone unreported. "This is what you've walked into," Commander Reynolds said, her voice measured. "These are the individuals hunting him, and now you. You were never supposed to see this, but we need someone who can act outside the system, someone who can move unnoticed. That's why we contacted you." Carla's mind swirled. She had never imagined her act of kindness could place her in a role of such magnitude. Her life had been ordinary, predictable. Now, she was being asked to participate in covert operations, to aid a man with lethal enemies, to navigate a world she didn't understand. "Why me?" she asked. "I'm just me. I'm not trained for this." Commander Reynolds' eyes softened slightly. "You've already proven you can act under pressure. You think, you improvise, you protect. That's rare. Most people would have fled. Most people would have frozen. Not you." Carla swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing on her chest. She had been terrified just hours ago, and now she was being asked to put herself in even greater danger. But for the first time, she felt a strange sense of clarity. This was no longer about fear, it was about purpose. The Ranger arrived moments later, moving cautiously into the warehouse where they had been directed. His arm was bandaged, but the tension in his shoulders remained. "Carla," he said, voice low, "I didn't think you'd get this far on your own. You made it." "We don't have time for congratulations," Commander Reynolds interrupted. "You both need to move. The network pursuing you is sophisticated and they're closing in. We can offer protection, but only if you follow instructions exactly. One misstep and it's over." The Ranger nodded. "I trust you," he said quietly to Carla. The three of them slipped through the dockyard, moving silently between stacks of containers. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every echo could signal an ambush. The Navy team coordinated efficiently, using hand signals and low whispers. Carla realized she had never witnessed such precision. The adrenaline surged through her body again, this time mingled with a sense of awe. At one point they paused behind a large shipping container. Carla crouched low, heart hammering. Through a narrow gap she saw a black SUV cruising the perimeter of the dockyard, windows dark, engine low and deliberate. The hunters were methodical, predictable in their patterns, but deadly nonetheless. Commander Reynolds placed a hand on her shoulder. "Keep your head down, move when I signal. You're with us now, trust your instincts, they've kept you alive this long." Carla nodded, the fear still there but tempered by resolve. She had no choice but to rely on her wits, on her courage, and on the Navy team guiding her through the labyrinth of danger. Finally, they reached a secure location, a small, heavily guarded warehouse converted into a temporary safe house. Inside, monitors displayed real-time feeds of surrounding streets, tracking movement, vehicles, and potential threats. Carla felt a strange mixture of relief and tension. Safe, but not truly safe. The danger was still out there, waiting, observing, calculating. Commander Reynolds turned to Carla. "You'll need to stay here for now. Rest, gather information, and prepare. You're going to be involved in operations designed to protect the Ranger and expose the corrupt network targeting him. It will be dangerous. It will be exhausting, but you have a role to play." Carla's chest tightened. She had never imagined herself in such a position. Every fear, every doubt collided in her mind. But beneath it, a determination solidified. She had helped the Ranger once. Now she would do it again, and she would survive no matter what it took. As she sat in the safe house, watching monitors track every shadow outside, she realized the truth. Her life had changed forever. Ordinary existence was gone. The Navy had recognized her courage, but it also came with a price, one she had only begun to comprehend. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. "You've been noticed. They are coming. Time is running out." Carla felt the full weight of the situation crash over her. She had crossed a line into a world she barely understood, a world of secrecy, danger, and deadly stakes. But she also knew this. She could not turn back. The Ranger, the Navy, and the mission ahead demanded courage, and she had discovered that courage already resided within her. In that quiet moment, staring at the monitors and the night outside, Carla Monroe made a decision. She would fight. She would survive. And she would protect the Ranger no matter the cost. The warehouse safe house was quiet, deceptively so. The monitors cast flickering shadows across Carla Monroe's face as she studied the screens, her pulse still elevated from the adrenaline of the night's flight through the city. Every vehicle, every shadowed alley, every moving figure outside the reinforced walls was a potential threat. The Navy had provided her a temporary sanctuary, but Carla knew instinctively that danger never slept, and neither could she. The Ranger sat nearby, his bandaged arm resting on his knee. He was alert, scanning the monitors, his jaw tight with tension. Carla watched him, realizing the burden he carried wasn't just physical. Every decision, every movement had consequences. One wrong step could mean death, not just for him, but for her as well. Commander Reynolds entered the room quietly, clipboard in hand, eyes sharp. "Carla," she said, voice low but commanding, "we're giving you the first operational role. You need to move with the Ranger tonight. You'll assist in gathering intel and ensuring his safety while we track the corrupt network. One misstep and it's over." Carla's heart raced. This was the moment she had been preparing for in her mind, though nothing had truly prepared her for it. She swallowed hard, nodding. "I'm ready," she said, though the words trembled. Reynolds gave her a brief, approving nod. "Trust your instincts. They've kept you alive this far." Within minutes, Carla and the Ranger were moving again, slipping into the night through a discreet exit at the back of the warehouse. The city was dark and damp, the faint smell of rain still lingering. Every street corner seemed charged with tension, every passing car a potential threat. Carla's eyes darted constantly, scanning for danger. She felt the weight of her responsibility pressing on her shoulders like lead. The Ranger led her to a series of abandoned warehouses near the riverfront. "We need to infiltrate the operations center of the network tracking me," he whispered. "If we can access their communications, we can see who's pulling the strings and anticipate their next moves." Carla's stomach twisted. She wasn't trained for this, wasn't armed for this, but she couldn't show fear, not now, not when lives depended on it. "Okay," she whispered back. "Let's do it." They approached the first building cautiously, ducking behind dumpsters and crates to avoid detection. The Ranger signaled her to freeze. Two men, armed and professional-looking, passed by the entrance. Carla's heart raced, her hands shaking, but she followed his lead, crouching low and holding her breath. Once the men moved on, they slipped inside the warehouse through a side door the Ranger had scouted earlier. Inside, darkness pressed in from all sides. The scent of oil, rust, and dust filled the air. They moved silently, weaving between stacked crates and broken machinery. Every sound, her heartbeat, the scrape of a boot on metal, felt magnified. Carla realized that one wrong noise could alert the entire operation. As they reached a small office at the back, the Ranger motioned for her to hold the door. "I need to access the main server," he whispered. "Cover me and don't let anyone see you." Carla nodded, adrenaline sharpening her senses. She pressed herself against the wall, peering out to watch for movement. Minutes stretched into eternity as the Ranger worked swiftly, fingers flying over the keyboard. She could feel the tension in the air, a pressure that seemed almost physical. Suddenly, a faint creak echoed from the floor above. Carla's stomach lurched. Footsteps. Someone was moving. Someone was coming down the staircase. She tightened her grip on the small flashlight she had brought, trying to remain invisible in the shadows. The Ranger glanced at her, eyes dark with urgency. "Quiet, stay low." A door above opened and a voice called out faintly, "Check the office, something's off." Carla's heart pounded. The man or men were coming closer. Every instinct screamed at her to act, to flee, but she knew any sudden movement could be fatal. She crouched lower, holding her breath as the footsteps drew nearer. The Ranger continued to type, working as if the danger wasn't immediate, though Carla could see the tension in his shoulders. She felt a surge of admiration and fear. This man had been through real combat, and yet here they were, trapped in a city warehouse, hunted like prey. The footsteps stopped just outside the office door. Carla felt her chest tighten, her vision narrowing. She could hear the faint rustle of clothing, the subtle movement of someone preparing to enter. 1 second stretched into 5. Then, as if by some miracle, the footsteps retreated. Carla exhaled slowly, almost unable to believe they had escaped notice. She looked at the Ranger, who finally allowed himself a brief nod of acknowledgement. "We're not safe yet," he whispered, "but this gives us what we need. I've accessed their communications, locations, schedules, names. Now we know where they operate and we can anticipate their moves." Carla exhaled, the weight of relief heavy but fleeting. "What now?" she asked. The Ranger paused, eyes scanning the dim room. "We move. We can't linger. Every second we stay here, we risk discovery." They slipped back into the shadows, exiting the warehouse the way they had come, moving silently through the maze of alleys and abandoned buildings. Carla's mind was racing, trying to process everything they had learned, everything they had witnessed. This was no ordinary chase. This was a sophisticated operation, and they were in the center of it, exposed and vulnerable. At one point, they paused behind a stack of shipping containers. The Ranger peered around the corner, spotting a black SUV moving slowly through the streets. Carla felt her stomach drop. The hunters were methodical, patient, and terrifyingly close. "They're adapting," the Ranger muttered. "They know we've accessed their systems. They'll be more aggressive now." Carla swallowed hard. "How do we survive that?" "We stay ahead," he replied. "We move fast, we think ahead, and we trust no one." The words hung in the air, heavy and cold. Carla realized that the Ranger wasn't just talking about their enemies. He was talking about everyone, even those who claimed to be allies. Survival in this world meant vigilance, cunning, and a willingness to act under pressure. Hours passed as they navigated the city streets, slipping through abandoned alleys and shadowed corners. Carla's body ached, her legs trembled, but she kept moving, following the Ranger's lead. Every moment was tense, every step calculated. She had never felt more alive and more terrified in her entire life. Finally, they reached a temporary safe house, one of several set up by the Navy for moments like this. Inside, monitors displayed live feeds of the surrounding streets. Carla sank into a chair, breathing heavily, sweat mixing with the grime and rain on her face. The Ranger handed her a small tablet. "This is our plan for the next phase," he said. "We can't just run forever. We need to strike back, gather evidence, expose the corrupt network. But it's dangerous, and it will require everything we've got." Carla stared at the screen, the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. She had already survived so much, but the next phase promised even greater danger. Yet for the first time she felt something else: resolve, courage, determination. She had helped him once, and now she was committed to seeing this through. Outside, the city hummed quietly, but Carla knew the storm was far from over. Hunters moved in the shadows unseen, their intentions deadly. Inside, she and the ranger prepared for the fight ahead, knowing that every choice, every movement could mean the difference between life and death. The safe house was quiet, but the silence felt like a fragile illusion. Carla Monroe sat on a battered chair, staring at the monitors displaying the city streets outside. Every passing car, every flicker of movement made her pulse jump. The Navy had provided temporary sanctuary, but she had learned the hard way that no place was truly safe. Every shadow could hide an enemy, every stranger could be a threat. The ranger sat across from her, going over the data they had obtained from the network server. Names, schedules, locations, enough to expose the entire operation. His eyes were sharp, calculating, but the tension in his shoulders betrayed how deeply the threat weighed on him. Carla studied him, trying to internalize his calm determination, his ability to think clearly even in the face of imminent danger. Commander Reynolds entered the room, clipboard in hand. "Carla, the next phase is critical," she said, her voice low, urgent. "We need you to accompany the ranger to intercept a key communication meeting tonight. It's risky, but it's the best opportunity to gather intel on the leadership behind the network." Carla swallowed hard. She had survived gunmen, black SUVs, and covert hunts through the city, but the thought of entering an unknown location, facing trained operatives, made her stomach twist. Still, she nodded. "I'm ready," she said, forcing courage into her voice. "Good, you'll need to follow instructions exactly," Reynolds said. "One misstep and it could cost both of you your lives." Hours later, night had fallen over the city. Carla and the ranger moved through the streets under the cover of darkness, blending into alleys and shadows. Carla's heart hammered with every step, every sound amplified by adrenaline. They arrived at an abandoned office building, the location identified through the network's communications. The ranger peered through a cracked window. "2 guards at the entrance," he whispered. "We wait until they move or get distracted." Carla crouched low, heart racing, trying to steady her breath. Every instinct screamed danger. Suddenly, a movement in the street caught her eye. Another black SUV cruising slowly, tires low and deliberate. Her stomach dropped. They were being watched. The ranger grabbed her hand briefly, a silent signal to stay calm. "We move now," he said. They slipped through the shadows and entered the building via back entrance, avoiding the guards outside. Inside, the air was heavy, thick with dust and the faint scent of decay. The building seemed abandoned, but Carla knew better. Every creak of the floor, every faint echo could signal discovery. As they approached a stairwell leading to the upper floors, the ranger paused. "Something's off," he murmured. "Stay alert." Carla's pulse raced as they ascended quietly. The hallway at the top was dimly lit, doors closed on either side. A faint murmur of voices drifted through the air, signaling they were close. The ranger led her to a narrow vent, gesturing for her to climb in while he moved to another access point. Carla wriggled through the vent, heart pounding. Her hands were slick with sweat, but she forced herself to focus. When she emerged into a small office, her breath caught in her throat. Inside were men in suits, deep in conversation, surrounded by files and laptops. This was the heart of the network, the very people hunting them, orchestrating operations that had already put lives at risk. She fumbled with the small camera device the ranger had given her, snapping photos of documents and screens as silently as possible. Every second felt like an eternity. Then, the sound of the office door creaking made her freeze. A man stepped inside, tall, imposing, and familiar. Her heart lurched as she recognized a figure she had trusted earlier, a liaison from the Navy, someone she had believed was helping them. "Carla Monroe," the man said, voice smooth and cold. "You didn't think you could sneak around unnoticed, did you?" Shock and disbelief froze her. You're with them," she whispered. He smiled, a predator's grin. "Let's just say my loyalties are complicated. The ranger is valuable, but you, well, you're expendable. Too clever, too curious. That makes you dangerous. Carla's mind raced. She had trusted the Navy Commander Reynolds the entire operation, and now betrayal had surfaced from the shadows she thought were safe. Her pulse surged. She had to act, and fast. The ranger appeared through another vent, crouching low, hand on his pistol. "Carla, move," he hissed. She bolted, weaving between desks and office equipment as the traitor lunged toward her. Her mind screamed survival. She grabbed a metal chair, swinging it with all her strength, catching him off guard. He stumbled, giving her precious seconds to reach the stairwell. The ranger followed, taking down 2 guards with swift precision. Carla kept running, her legs pumping, heart hammering, every step echoing the danger closing in behind them. They burst through the building exit, diving into the darkness outside. The SUV from earlier appeared, headlights cutting through the night. Men jumped out, weapons raised. Carla felt a rush of panic, but the ranger grabbed her hand, pulling her behind a stack of crates. Bullets pinged off metal, the sound deafening. "Stay low, move on my signal," he shouted. Carla obeyed, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She felt fear and exhilaration at once, the raw intensity of life and death sharpening every sense. As they sprinted toward a waiting alley, the ranger whispered, "We have to split. They'll focus on me if we separate. You go left, I'll go right. Head to the safe house, trust no one." Carla hesitated but nodded. She darted left into the shadows, dodging bullets, diving behind dumpsters, heart hammering. Every step was a gamble, every breath precious. She could hear the men chasing, closer with each second. She reached a narrow side street and spotted a black sedan idling. Without thinking, she slipped inside, doors locking automatically. The driver's eyes met hers briefly, another Navy contact she hoped was trustworthy. The engine roared, tires screeching as they sped into the night. As the city blurred past, Carla pressed her forehead to the seat back, heart racing, mind spinning. The betrayal had cut deep. How many of the people she trusted were truly allies? And more importantly, how much longer could she and the ranger survive against enemies who were methodical, ruthless, and everywhere? Finally, the sedan came to a halt at a hidden safe house near the docks. Carla leapt out, legs trembling, adrenaline still coursing through her. She collapsed inside, breath ragged, heart still pounding. A familiar voice greeted her. "You made it," Commander Reynolds said, eyes sharp but relieved. "You were efficient, you got what we needed." Carla nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. She had survived, barely, but the weight of the betrayal still pressed down on her. One thing was clear. In this game, trust was a dangerous luxury. Every ally could be a potential enemy, every corner could hide a threat. The ranger arrived minutes later, battered but alive, clutching the intel they had gathered. Carla ran to him, relief and fear colliding. "We made it," she whispered. He nodded, eyes scanning the perimeter. "For now," he said, "but the network is adapting. They'll come harder, faster, smarter, and next time we might not get away." Carla swallowed hard. Her life had become a constant battle, fear, courage, betrayal, and survival all intertwined. But beneath it, a stubborn determination burned. She had helped the ranger once. Now she would continue to fight, whatever it took. The night hung heavy over the city, a blanket of darkness pierced only by scattered streetlights and distant sirens. Carla Monroe sat in the cramped safe house, muscles trembling, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. Every moment of the past 48 hours, the chase, the betrayal, the close calls, had led to this point. She had survived impossible odds, outsmarted deadly pursuers, and faced a world she had never imagined existed beyond her ordinary life. The ranger sat across from her, his eyes scanning every monitor, every reflection in the room. "They'll come tonight," he murmured. "They know we have evidence. They'll try everything to silence us." Carla clenched her fists, her nails digging into her palms. "We can't just wait, we have to move." Commander Reynolds entered, her expression grim but determined. The Navy is ready to intervene. Satellite surveillance, tactical teams, air support, everything we can mobilize. But timing is critical. We have a narrow window to extract both of you safely and neutralize the threat. Carla's heart raced. Navy support. The very entity she had doubted, fearing betrayal, was now her lifeline. Yet fear lingered. Trust had become a currency she couldn't spend freely. One wrong step and the network would strike, ruthless and lethal. Minutes later, a convoy of unmarked vans arrived at a secluded dock behind the warehouse district. Carla and the Ranger slipped inside under the cover of darkness, the sound of engines roaring softly beneath the night's stillness. The doors shut, sealing them in relative safety, yet the tension inside the vehicle was palpable. The Ranger leaned close, voice low, "Ready." Carla nodded, the weight of every decision, every risk coiling inside her like steel. "Let's finish this." The vans moved silently toward the rendezvous point where the Navy would intercept the network's command center. Every turn, every alley was mapped, tracked, calculated to avoid detection. But Carla knew the hunters were relentless, capable of predicting their movements with terrifying precision. Suddenly her phone buzzed, another message from an unknown number. "We're watching, it's over, you can't hide." Carla swallowed hard. Fear surged, but alongside it came clarity. The threat was immense, but she had survived this long. Every close call had honed her instincts. She could not falter now. The convoy arrived at a large warehouse near the industrial port, the location of the network's main operation. From a distance, Navy drones hovered, providing real-time surveillance. Tactical teams fanned out, moving silently, positioning themselves for extraction and neutralization. Carla and the Ranger exited the van, moving with precision under Reynolds' guidance. Every shadow seemed alive with threat. Every step carried the weight of potential death. Yet with each movement, Carla felt a fierce resolve. She would not back down, not now, not ever. Inside the warehouse, the network operatives were gathered, unaware of the Navy's intervention. Carla's camera device, strapped securely to her chest, had captured the final evidence needed to dismantle their operation. She handed it to the Ranger, who nodded with a grim smile. "This ends tonight," he whispered. The Navy tactical team breached the warehouse with surgical precision. Flashbangs exploded in the shadows, disorienting the operatives, while armed teams moved with deadly efficiency. Carla ducked low, adrenaline sharpening her senses as the chaos unfolded around her. Gunfire echoed, bouncing off metal walls. The network's leaders scrambled, trying to escape, but the Navy's coordination was flawless. Carla felt a surge of awe and relief. Finally, the hunters were being hunted. Through the chaos, the Ranger moved beside her, covering her as they navigated toward the command room. Every second was a battle, but together they pushed forward, driven by necessity, fear, and determination. They reached the room containing the network's servers and files. Carla inserted her device into the main terminal, transferring the final evidence into Navy custody. Every keystroke felt monumental, every second counted. The system hummed as data flowed, documenting illegal operations, corruption, and treachery that spanned local and national levels. Suddenly, a figure emerged from the shadows, a Navy liaison she had once trusted, but now recognized as the traitor from Part 7. His expression twisted with rage as he raised a weapon. Carla's heart leapt, but before he could act, the Ranger tackled him to the ground. A firefight erupted, but the Navy teams intervened immediately, neutralizing the threat. Carla stood frozen for a heartbeat, watching betrayal and danger collide with justice and resolve. When the dust settled, the warehouse was secure. The Navy had apprehended the network operatives and the traitorous liaison. Carla and the Ranger, though exhausted and bloodied, were alive. For the first time in 48 hours, the storm of fear and uncertainty lifted, replaced by a fragile sense of relief. Commander Reynolds approached, her expression a mix of pride and gravity. "Carla Monroe," she said, voice strong, "you acted with courage, intelligence, and resolve. You helped save not only the ranger but also ensured that dangerous individuals were brought to justice. Your actions tonight will not be forgotten." Carla felt a lump rise in her throat. Tears pricked her eyes, not from relief, not from exhaustion, but from the weight of everything she had endured. I just did what I had to do," she said softly. The ranger placed a hand on her shoulder, his eyes meeting hers with unspoken respect and gratitude. "You saved my life," he said quietly. "And you didn't just survive, you made sure justice was done. I don't know how I could have done any of this without you." Outside, the rain had returned, soft and cleansing, washing the city in a quiet glow. Carla looked at the horizon, realizing that the life she had once known, the ordinary, predictable existence, was gone. She had been tested in fire, chased through shadows, betrayed, hunted, and yet she had endured. She had discovered courage, resilience, and a capacity for action she never imagined she possessed. As the Navy extracted the Ranger and Carla from the city under protective escort, her phone buzzed one final time. A message from an unknown number appeared. "You won this time, but remember, courage always attracts danger." Carla smiled faintly, a mixture of exhaustion and defiance. She had faced unimaginable danger, outwitted hunters, and survived betrayal. And yet, she knew one truth above all. She would never back down from doing what was right, no matter the cost. The Navy flew them to a secure location. Carla finally allowed herself to breathe, to feel relief, and in that moment she realized the full gravity of her journey. She had been an ordinary woman, thrown into extraordinary circumstances, and had emerged alive, resilient, and unbroken. The ranger turned to her as the plane lifted into the night sky. "What now?" he asked. Carla looked out at the city below, rain reflecting neon lights like fractured diamonds. "Now," she said, voice steady, "we make sure this never happens again, and we survive." For the first time in days, the city felt like a place she could breathe in, a place she had conquered, not through violence alone, but through courage, resolve, and the determination to stand when it mattered most. And somewhere deep in the night, as the Navy's planes carried them to safety, Carla Monroe realized that she had not just survived. She had transformed. Epilogue: Carla would return to the city eventually, her life forever altered, no longer ordinary, no longer predictable. She had faced death, betrayal, and danger on every side and emerged stronger. The Ranger would continue his mission, but Carla had earned a place in a world of courage, intelligence, and action she never knew existed. The Navy had recognized her bravery, and the corrupt network was dismantled, thanks to her choices. She was no longer just a bystander, she was a force.